an American, where at least I know I'm free. And I won't forget the men who died, who gave that right to me, and I gladly stand up.
Good morning, Travis Wheeler. My name is Jesse Berger. I'm chairman of Harnett County's Republican Party. Very happy to have you on board with us today. Of course, you're running for District Court Judge Seat 2, District Court 11, Seat 2. Without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to you to introduce yourself to the district and to the county.
Mr. Berger, it's good to be here with you today. My name is Travis Wheeler. I am a candidate, as Mr. Berger said, for Judicial Seat 2 in the 11th Judicial District, which is Johnson, Harnett, and Lee County. And I've been an attorney in Smithfield for 21, almost 22 years. I've had my office across the street from the courthouse, right across from the jail, for 19 years. And I grew up here in Smithfield. My seat has to be filled by an attorney from Johnston County. It's a county-only seat, but it runs in all three counties. You're elected in all three, but an attorney from Johnston County has to be one to fill this seat according to the statute. So I'm running for that seat.
Awesome. Well, thank you for that introduction. If you could tell us a little bit more about some of your background as well. How long have you lived in this area? How long you've practiced law? And maybe even get into a little bit of what is motivating you to run for this judicial seat.
So, like I said, I've been practicing for 21 years in my home county of Johnston County, and I grew up in Smithfield. My parents were both from here. Was in law enforcement, the 2-year degree program at Johnston Community College, and had an opportunity to go to court and saw attorneys do their thing in court and said, you know, I really would, looks like a really interesting profession, and I like how that ran in court. So I said, you know, I really want to do that. So I talked it over with my law enforcement instructor. He was a man from Dunn named Robert Jernigan. Sorry, took me a second there. And when we talked, he was like, if you have the chance to go to law school and you don't go, it would be a waste. You really need to go. And so I looked into going and looked up law schools, found that Campbell University had an undergraduate and a law school program, and it was just down the road in Bowie's Creek. So I went down there, actually drove down and went into the admission office and talked to someone. I was very disheartened to find out you have to have an undergrad degree before you go to law school. You can't just jump right into the practice of law. So I went there and interviewed and got in, went to Campbell University for undergraduate, and then got into law school immediately after. Graduated from Campbell in 1997 in undergrad, started law school, and then graduated from law school in the year 2000. And I've been a practicing attorney right back in my hometown ever since.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate the background and the information, and I'd like to get into a little bit more of the specifics now of being a judge. So, of course, all of the candidates that I've interviewed for these types of positions, the first question I ask is, what is the job of a judge, of a district court judge specifically, and what are your left and right limits?
That is exactly a great question to ask, because judges do a lot of things. District court judges, they host or preside over several different courtrooms, and each one of those has an immense impact on the people that have to go in that courtroom. You could start by saying district court judges set bonds for first appearances for felonies. So they determine whether or not people are being held on an unreasonable bond or whether or not their bond is too low, given their circumstances, what they're charged with, and their prior record. So they determine whether or not someone gets charged with a crime and can immediately get out. And if they break the law again, they come back, and do they get out again? Or do they stay in the jail for a while? They preside over domestic court, where they determine whether or not people get divorced and how they split up their property. It's called equitable distribution. They determine who gets custody of minor children. They determine the visitation rights of the other parent. They determine whether or not people didn't pay their child support, whether or not they did so willfully, and whether or not they need to go to jail for not paying their child support. They preside over the Department of Social Services court to determine whether or not the Department of Social Services can take your children away from you if you're neglecting them, abusing them or can't afford to feed them or care for them. They preside over juvenile court, determining whether or not juveniles are convicted of criminal offenses. And that's a whole nother issue of the law, is when juveniles get charged with the crimes. Like, there's some limitations on what judges can do, what punishments they can hand out. They preside over jury trials in minor civil cases. So anytime you have a car accident, if there's a legal dispute or failure to pay money owed under $10,000, you can have a bench trial in front of a judge or a jury trial in front of a district court judges. So district court judges really touch a lot of people's lives. If you come to the court system, it's more likely you're going to see a district court judge than you are a superior court judge. Fewer people are going to commit a high-level felony and have to go to superior court. Also, district court judges preside in probable cause court over low-level felonies. All felonies, if they're not taken through indictment, come through the district court system. And judges can resolve the H&I felonies, and anything higher than that has to be handled in superior court. So they get a chance to touch a lot of people's lives. They preside over domestic violence, criminal actions, domestic violence protective order court, where you try to get a restraining order against someone for committing an act of domestic violence, or a no contact order in the event that you're being stalked by someone you weren't in a relationship with. And they preside over criminal court if you get a seatbelt ticket or a speeding ticket. And a lot of people get those. We see a lot of people come through the court system in speeding ticket court. If you get a DWI, you're going to go see a district court judge. And so they get the opportunity to really affect a lot of people's lives in a major way.
So with the amount of diversity of cases that you would be looking at, what is your belief on experience level of the candidate that is running for a position? And do you believe that there are maybe certain experiences that have a higher weight than others?
I'd say a multitude of experiences. If you have only done one area of law, if you've only been a prosecutor for your entire life, or if you've only been a domestic attorney, it's hard to come into criminal court and figure out what's going on. The same thing with criminal attorneys. I do primarily criminal, but I've gone in every district court we've had. I did child support court for about 10 years. I did the Department of Social Services court for about 10 years. And I've gone to every criminal courtroom. I've done, I won't say a ton of domestic cases, but I've done some, and I've gone in that courtroom and I know how it works. I've been in every district court we have, and we have a lot. There's people's court where people take out charges on one another. There's officer court where officers take out charges. I've gone to civil court. I've gone to domestic. I've gone everywhere you could go. And if you haven't been in that courtroom, it can be confusing. It's hard to imagine that you could come out after practicing 5 years and know how, and especially if you practice 5 years in only one area. Let's say you only did civil law, and then they throw you in with a complex DWI trial or a juvenile case or the Department of Social Services, and you've got to figure out what's the burden of proof, what are the elements, what is one party, because one party is going to have a burden. What do they have to prove? What are the individual things they have to prove? And by what standard do they have to convince you? Is it clear and convincing evidence? The greater weight of the evidence? Is it beyond a reasonable doubt? And to adjust to that situation is difficult, to say the least. I know that I would not have been ready to be a district court judge after 5 or 6 years of practice. It would be extremely difficult to be competent in that. And I'm not saying some people couldn't do it, but it would be an adjustment. And so I value the wide variety of experiences that you've seen every courtroom, that you know what goes on in those courtrooms, and that you're able to make a quick adjustment. And instead of sitting there trying to figure out what's going on, you actually know what's going on, and then you can pay attention to the people, their demeanor, how they testify, the arguments, and it's easier to make that adjustment if you know what you're doing.
Sure. And that makes a lot of sense. So I appreciate the answer. I'd like to ask some, I guess, a two-part question now. And I believe that this is kind of the overarching item when it comes to our judges. But The first one is judicial discretion. I'd like you to discuss some of what judicial discretion is, but I'd also like you to discuss what your specific judicial philosophy is and how that maybe correlates with your discretion.
When you say judicial philosophy, can I get a clarification on what you like? Do you mean like it's hard to figure out exactly what you mean by that?
Sure. I mean, so I guess what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to differentiate between the two, because these are two terms that I hear in the legal circles: judicial philosophy, judicial discretion. Philosophy being, I guess, more your approach, whereas discretion is the actual your ability, your left and right limits of what you are going to allow to happen or not allow to happen.
I understand exactly what you mean then. So as far as judicial philosophy, I've been in court for 21 years, in district court 5 days a week, and often in multiple district courts, because they often have 2 or 3 running at the same time, sometimes 4 or 5. We have all, as attorneys, seen judges that give people a hard time in court. And what I believe is that when you belittle or criticize attorneys in court, you destroy a little bit of the faith in the judicial system. People come in and it's called a court hearing. It's called a court hearing because people deserve to be heard. The attorneys deserve to be heard and their arguments listened to and not blown off. And the people that come and represent themselves or just don't have an attorney, they need to be heard too. And they need to be treated with respect. When people come into your courtroom, every person in there, you don't know their background. You don't know their life experiences. You don't know how they got there, but you can make an effort to find out. You can listen to what they have to say. And believe me, there are times where it's frustrating because we see people come in and offer up some completely irrelevant things. But if you listen long enough and let them have an opportunity, they walk out of there feeling like, at least the judge didn't cut me off, or at least the judge didn't fuss me out. At least the judge heard what I had to say. And whether or not they win or lose, they were heard. That's why it's called a hearing. You have to hear them. And that's so important. And with respect to attorneys, if you treat them badly, their client sitting next to them think their attorney's terrible. The judge fussed at my attorney. My attorney didn't know what they were doing. My attorney failed me. I paid that attorney money. And they walk out of there and fuss and tell all their friends, my attorney did a terrible job. And they tell who their attorney is. And then you have other people that are not gonna go hire that attorney. Mm-hmm. And they think, well, the attorneys are all working with one another. And that's where the system starts to crumble. So it's so important to at least listen to them and listen to their arguments and treat them well. So their client at least says, well, the judge listened to us. The law just wasn't on our side. If they want to blame the law, that's appropriate because the law is going to be on one person's side or the other, or neither. Sometimes you can't make anybody happy out of a court case, but at least one person's walking out of there unhappy. And if they're unhappy because their facts didn't meet the requirements of the law, that's one thing. But where they think that their attorney did terribly and everyone in the audience thinks that their attorney did terribly, then they all go out and say, the court system's rigged. We can't have that. And then if you lose the judicial system, we have problems in society at that point. And with respect to the discretion, judges have a lot of discretion. I guess I've thought about this from the other night, and judicial discretion is that amount of control that the judge has over what they do. If the law says the judge shall do something, you have to do it. If the judge says, or if the law says you shall review their bond at a first appearance, or that the state has to prove the case beyond a reasonable doubt, you have no discretion on that. You can't say, well, they proved it the majority of the way, but not quite, but I'm still gonna find for one party or the other. You can't do that. But there are plenty of things in the law that says the judge may. And what the judge may do is they may be able to determine what the amount of that bond is. Or they can determine whether or not they're the sole determiners of whether or not facts were proven in court. So one party puts on evidence and the judge is the only person that decides whether or not that evidence was enough to meet an element or to meet the burden of proof. And that's a lot of power to vest within someone that can take your children away from you or can put you in jail. So judicial discretion has a lot to do with what the judge has the ability to decide or not decide, and it's less to do with what the judge must do as a judicial official.
And the judicial discretion portion is something that it blows my mind with what's being allowed to happen nowadays, because back in August 23rd, 1831, the New York Spectator had published an article, and it said that the presiding judge remarked that he had not before been aware that there was a man living who did not believe in the existence of God, that this belief constituted the sanction of all testimony in a court of justice, and that he knew of no case in a Christian country where a witness had been permitted to testify without such belief, and he kicked the person out of the courtroom. And so it's amazing to me that judicial discretion started off with that, and now we're seeing cases where boys are apparently girls now, and this has to be argued in court. So I think that judicial discretion is something that people need to really understand, and in order to properly elect someone, I think it's very important that we understand your background and how you'll wield that discretion. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I was waiting for you. So judicial discretion, it gives the opportunity to legislate from the bench.
Mm-hmm.
You can intermix your values in with a decision. There are plenty of justices on the Supreme Court that use liberal ideology to modify and change statutes to fit what they want them to do. And they do it in the craziest ways. There are some cases I'm confused by the logic that they use to get there. And it's just a matter of twisting words or combining different rights to try to create a new right. And I don't think that's appropriate. I think that the rights are what they say they are. They're very well written. They mean what they say. And to try to twist them to make a new right, it goes against the Constitution. If we needed a new right, there's an amendment process where you can create a new amendment and add a right if you want to, but it requires a lot of effort. To be able to do that just by coming in front of the Supreme Court when the panel is for you, when there are more liberal judges than conservative judges, or they can get enough votes to change the course of the entire nation, I can't get on board with that. I think judges have to apply the law as it's written and what it says and what they meant when they wrote it.
So 2 follow-ups to that. The first one, how do we maintain trust in the system when people can see that that there are obvious people playing games within the system and using it as their little plaything because they have the financial capability to do so? And also, what impact, or how do you believe that a judge's decisions or rulings impact the community on a larger scale? Obviously, with on the highest level, either adding or subtracting trust in the system.
That's the $1 million question at the moment. Is how do you maintain trust in the system? You have to, because most people go to district court, you have to show them in person. Your actions mean so much more than your words. You create trust in the system by creating trust at the local level, but eventually that's got to trickle up to the federal level. When people trust the system, I think when they're happy with it and they understand these people share my values, they're more encouraged to vote. It is, so many people say, my vote doesn't matter. And it does. And if you get enough people together that suddenly realize that their votes matter, they can swing an election very easily. But if you don't, if you stay home and say, I'm not going to go vote, because the country's going downhill and nothing I can do is going to change that, there's where the breakdown starts to occur. But if you can motivate those people to go out at the local level first, and then the federal level after that, you can elect a president and representatives in Congress who make sure that the right people get on the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, because those are the people making huge nationwide policy decisions. And if you don't elect conservatives into office, then you're not going to get conservatives on the court. You know, the Supreme Court is a lifetime appointment. It takes a long time for someone to roll around and come off. You pretty much have to be super old or die to replace them on the Supreme Court. So it's a long wait. It's a long fight. If you get disillusioned in the beginning and you just give up, if conservatives give up their right to vote and their right to change how things are being run up in Washington and at the local level, then this is that you tacitly allow this to occur. And it's so important to not give in to that temptation to not vote. Voting is the number one right we have to affect change in our society. With respect to maintaining it, you have to elect people at the local level and they have to live up to it. There's plenty of justices that have been appointed by conservative presidents that then turn around and vote with a liberal ideology. Just because you have an R next to your name doesn't mean you're a conservative. And you have to know who you're voting for. And that's why I'm glad you do events like this, because it allows people to sit down and at least listen to the candidates. But candidates can say whatever they want to. It's actions that speak louder than words. I've been a conservative my entire life. When I was 10, Ronald Reagan took office. And that tells my age. But and I was 18 when he left office. And his presidency had a huge impact on me in my formative years. People ask me, are you conservative or Republican? Yes. Is there another party? I don't understand your question. I don't understand the logic behind liberal ideology. And it's hard. As an attorney, I understand there's people on both sides and they have arguments. And you can listen to their argument. Some arguments may be well thought out, but some fall woefully short. During Donald Trump's presidency, I caught the slings and arrows of just about every attorney in my bar. A lot of them lean a little left. So we'd be in the attorney conference room and they would just be in there fussing, oh, you're a Trumper, and would just they'd give me a hard time, to say the least. And it was always just an argument back. We would always just fuss and fight. But at the end of the day, we're all still friends. And that's the way things should be. You shouldn't, once you get too far to the ends of the spectrum, then you start to lose friends and you start to lose the ability to have discourse with people and have a rational legal argument. I'm very disheartened by some of the videos I see of conservative speakers trying to go to colleges and speak, and the liberals shout them down. We don't want to hear what you have to say. It's because they don't have a logical argument back. And at the point where you lose your ability to argue logically, then you're in the Civil War territory, and that starts to get inflamed. And we can't have that kind of discourse in America. If you can't talk, what else is left?
Well, and I think that the conversation part is, I think it's been exacerbated by the fact that we do have a lot of issues with mental illness. And so sometimes you think you're talking with a normal person and that person isn't all there, or there's something that's missing, and we're not allowed to discuss that, which I think is a problem. But going back to district court and trying to stay focused a little bit locally, what do you believe are some of the biggest issues that we're facing in the district, and how do you think you can fix those problems, whether it be overcrowding of the court system or maybe how certain processes or procedures are handled? But within our district, what do you think can be improved, and what's your proposed solution?
That's a super hard question to answer. Is like, how do you fix the court system when it operates as well as it can at times? During COVID, I know in Harnett and Lee County, things were shut down for a long time, and they didn't have criminal or civil jury trials at all. And the district court system became very clogged up with cases because they could only set a certain number of cases in blocks throughout the day. and those people could come, and then you'd have to go to the next block and get to the next set of people that came in. And so you've got a bunch of cases that are just backing up in the court system. Thankfully, I think we've moved past that now. At least I hope we have. They've done away with the mask mandate, at least here in Johnston County. I think in Harnett County and Lee as well. And getting people in the courtroom to resolve their cases is a priority. I mean, it's going to take long days and hard work on all parties, judges, district attorneys, defense attorneys, the clerk's office. There's a whole team of people who have to come into court and get these cases pushed through and have them tried where appropriate, enter pleas where they're appropriate, set up calendar calls, and have those people show up and be ready, instead of only having a certain number of cases on the trial calendar. Everyone else gets continued no matter what. How do you do that? As a judge, I think you show up and you sit on the bench and you make your ruling and try to run things as efficiently as you possibly can, understanding that judges are in charge of the courtroom, but the state, through the district attorney's office, calls criminal cases, and the domestic attorney group sets their cases for trial on it's called a blue or a red calendar. It's a calendar that's set out way in advance. They put their cases on, and I think you run that most efficiently by having backup cases ready to go. I know, so if you've got to set your domestic case on for a trial for some complicated equitable distribution or child custody, the wait is astounding. It's a month or two out, if not more. But when you come to court, sometimes the day before trial, cases resolve themselves. You know, you come in and your trial starts tomorrow, people start talking in earnest about coming to some sort of agreement, because one party or the other is like, I don't know, we might not get the ruling we want. And they wind up settling their case and having cases next on deck, ready to go, would be a great beneficial help. I know a lot of our domestic judges are doing that right now. I hear all the time about how their cases fell through, but they got another case coming in and they're ready to do it. And so just by putting in the hard work is the way that you start to move these cases through and fix them. And then, so criminal court's a whole nother matter. We talked a little bit about the trial setting, but the jail is overcrowded in Johnston County. There's a lot of people in jail that need their cases resolved one way or the other. It's hard to keep holding people in jail when they don't have places to put them. But it's also really dangerous to let people out on low bonds. So I think you have to prioritize who needs to stay in jail and who doesn't. If you've got a little trespass case or a misdemeanor larceny is bad. I agree. But you don't want to have someone who's committed murder or felony break and entering or a serious assault to get an unsecured bond or get out of jail because of overcrowding. So you really have to sit down and prioritize what cases have to stay in jail. The ones that, and so here's, you come in and you're 18 and you've never broken the law before and you stole something from Walmart. It's not a good thing. Not a good thing at all. Do you need to stay in jail for that? First time offense, never been in trouble before? Maybe not. But where you go out and steal something from Walmart and you get out on bond, and then you go steal something from Coach Purses and you get out on bond, and then you go steal something out of somebody's vehicle and you get out of bond, at some point you have to stay. These people are a threat to the community at large, in that if you don't have your doors locked, they're going to steal everything you own. We can't have that. So you have to really prioritize who are the repeat offenders, who are the serious offenders, who are the ones that a bond will ensure that they stay home, stay out of trouble, and are there other alternatives to making them stay out of trouble? And then if you keep coming back, sooner or later, I'm assuming you want to stay with us.
Right. I mean, and unfortunately, I had a relative that chose to go down more of a criminal path And I remember very distinctly conversations that I'd had with him, and he lived in Florida at the time. But he would watch what was happening in the courts so that he knew exactly which crimes he could get away with, that they were going to push below the radar. Very smart person, which always made me upset that he didn't use his intelligence for other more productive things. But nonetheless, these issues definitely impact the community. And like you said, making those determinations, that's super important. So as we're getting close to a 30-minute mark, I'd like to ask you just one last question, which is, why do you want to be a judge, and what do you think best qualifies you to be district court judge?
I want to be a judge because I've served 21 years as a court-appointed attorney for people that can't afford attorneys, and I've been able to affect my clients' lives. They come into my office, we talk. I encourage them always to do the right thing. I help them through the legal system, which is really what attorneys do. I've heard people say plenty of times that they think that the attorney's job is to win their case. And that's not it. You're there to make sure that they understand the legal process and to hold the police officers to the standard of conduct that you would want police officers to be held to hold the district attorney's office to the burden that they're required to prove. And if they do all the things right, if they jump through all the hoops, then the state should win. If they don't do things right, if a search is illegal or unconstitutional or violates someone's rights, or the state doesn't prove their burden, then they deserve to lose. That's how you protect the average citizen's rights, because how else are you going to protect the average citizen? But I've only been able to affect my clients. It makes me a little mad sometimes. I come through the courthouse, and when I see my clients, I'm like, tuck your shirt in, go put on a shirt, put on a belt, pull your pants up. Come into court looking like you deserve the result you want to get. Put your best foot forward. Come in and show the court system the respect that it's due, and work on being better. I cannot, as a defense attorney, affect other people's clients. I come out of the courtroom sometimes and I'm walking through the lobby or in the courtroom, and I see people and they're wearing their pants around their thighs with their underwear hanging out, or they're wearing a tube top and pajama pants to court and bedroom shoes. And I'm like, I have to come to court wearing a suit and tie every day. I asked a client one day, tuck your shirt in. He said, I can't do that. I turned around and said, what do you mean you can't do that? Is your zipper broken that you have to have your shirt untucked? He said, no, I just have a problem with authority. And I said, if you're not tucking your shirt in, I'm not going into court with you. You're either going to show some respect. If I have to come dressed like this, you better shape up. And he did. And he came into court, and you see these people multiple times coming through the court system. Like you said with your friend, a relative, I believe, they know the court system. And a lot of them are disillusioned with it. A lot of them come dressed that way because they don't respect the court system. So you can demand that they respect the court system. I can demand of my clients, you're going to tuck your shirt in. You're going to come dressed nice. I had a client come one day in a 3-piece suit. He was dressed better than me in court. I'm wearing a regular shoes. You got a 3-piece suit. I said, I am so proud of you. Oh my God. But he's my client. As a judge, I can affect everyone's client that comes into my courtroom. I can affect the respect level of everyone, even people that don't have attorneys. No one's client. They've come by themselves. You can try to help people where necessary. A big part of my platform is that as a judge, not only do you have to decide whether or not someone's guilty or not, or whether or not one party or the other met their burden of proof, you can decide with your discretion what the outcome's going to be beyond guilty or not guilty or win or lose. You get to make a lot of decisions about how that loss or win is constructed. Everyone can relate to a traffic ticket. Do you give that person a prayer for judgment if they're guilty? Does their record warrant it? Can you show compassion to people that have never been in trouble in their life and made one mistake. I heard a quote at a continuing legal education seminar one time. The quote was, "No one is as bad of a person as the worst thing they've done." That if they've only done one thing wrong in their life, do you judge them based on that or based on everything else they've done in their life? Do they deserve a measure of compassion from a judge? With a speeding ticket, you've never had a ticket before. Do you need a prayer for judgment? Do you deserve a prayer for judgment? Is it the right thing to do to give them a prayer for judgment? Or is it right to issue them a fine? Have they had a bunch of speeding tickets? Do they need to be hit a little bit harder in the pocketbook for speeding 10 times in 3 years? They keep coming back to court. Do you need to teach them a financial lesson? Or do you need to not teach them a financial lesson because they can't afford it? They're a single mom working 2 jobs, struggling to make ends meet. Do you put a fine on her? Or someone that's doing their best? And I'll go back to the clothing thing. What if I've had clients do this. What if they come to court and they've made one mistake and they deserve probation, deserve a chance, and they come dressed in dirty jeans and a dirty hoodie and a reflective vest where they just came from their construction job because they worked all night and all morning, but they're there. They call it the working man's suit, where you show up straight from work and you're not wearing a 3-piece suit, but you work hard. Judges determine what happens to you and how a judgment's applied against you. And they have a lot of discretion to be compassionate or to be firm. And a lot of being a judge is determining in a short period of time. They may only appear in front of you for a few minutes, but you can ask them a couple of questions and find out about them and really make an informed, educated decision about what they deserve out of their case and apply that. That's the secret of being a great judge. It's not about, you have to know the law. You have to know the elements. You have to know the burdens of proof. You also have to know people. And in 21 years of practicing in every district court we have almost, the only district court I haven't been to is mental health. But I've dealt with a lot of people in the other court systems with mental health. Learning how to gauge people through their body language, through the answers to your question, through their criminal record, through their attorney's advocacy, through the state's arguments. You can listen to all that and make a quick decision if you understand people. If you don't understand people, it's harder. If you haven't been in it a long time, if you don't know how that courtroom is, you're still trying to figure out what the burden of proof is, or did they meet the elements? But you're not paying attention to the people. And the people are the ones that we said before have to be heard. And they're the ones that you have to affect their life. And you're the one that has to make the decision. You have to make the right decision. Judges don't always make the right decision. Heaven forbid, it happens. But you want to minimize that. Everyone's human. How do you make the right decision as much as humanly possible? That's the secret.
Well, I appreciate your time, Travis. And obviously, like you said, we're all humans and we're all trying to do the best that we can and try and move this country in the right direction. So in closing, if you could just maybe give us your closing remarks and then how people can get a hold of you, how they can find out more information about your campaign.
Like I said, my name's Travis Wheeler. I've got a Facebook page. It's Travis Wheeler for District Court Judge. I've been very fortunate enough to meet a lot of people across the counties. They keep me locked up in Smithfield all the time in court because we have a backlog and we're always in court trying to resolve our cases. But the ability to campaign has been a blessing because it's been an opportunity for me to go to Harnett County and Lee County and get to meet some really great people. Those are the people that I want to serve as district court judge. Being able to go out and have a conversation with so many people, and the more you get to know people, the more you talk to them and actually listen to what they have to say, the more you find out you have so much in common. It's amazing the number of people that I've met that share my values. And that's so important. Your judge has to share your values, not just say that they do, genuinely do. I've had a lot of people join my Facebook page. I would love for everyone from Harnett County to join it, vote, or Travis Wheeler for district court judge. If you could join it, you can contact me directly on there. I had a lady contact me the other day and just had some questions about domestic violence. How would you feel about that? We had a long conversation. And she was like, I'm so impressed that you answered me back immediately. While I'm sitting in court or while I'm at the house, trying to get ready for the next day, the ability to sit down and talk to voters is important. They want to know about you. They can only do that if they ask questions. Like I said, you can say anything you want to in an interview or on your Facebook page. Your actions speak more. When they ask you the tough questions, what would you do about this? How do I know that you would vote that way? All my friends are in law enforcement. I've got more law enforcement friends on my Facebook than almost any other group. I've got a lot of jujitsu friends and I've got several lawyer friends, but law enforcement, coming from the background of being at the law enforcement technology degree program at JCC, we have a mindset that's very similar. And we sit around in court and we talk. I've met my best friends in court, introduced by their field training officer. Hey, this is Travis Wheeler. I've known him for a decade, really good guy. And so you hit it off with people that share your mindset. I open myself to any questions people want to ask because you start to learn about some of the things that lawyers see in court. And there are some shocking things that we learn. I spoke to someone at the Harnett County Forum the other day where they were talking about bonds. Why are bonds so low for drug dealers? I've had 2 clients who were charged with sale by video. That when you look at the video and you look at my clients, they weren't the person on the video. One had tattoos on the back of their hand in the video. My client had no tattoos. One was a 48-year-old woman selling. My client was 30 years old, and the older lady had hair that was cut to here. My client had hair that went down to the middle of her back. And the client who had the hair down to her back spent Christmas in the Harnett County Jail. They transferred her from Johnston County down there because of overcrowding. No one went and checked to see if the person they arrested was the person on the video. She spent Christmas in jail without her kids. That's why I do what I do. I have the opportunity to help so many people that are charged out of revenge or charged wrongfully or just by mistake. And like I said, I can only affect my clients. As a judge, I can affect everyone's. And that's what I want to do. And I would welcome people to join my Facebook page. Please send me a message, ask me a question. Let's engage in a conversation. You can see me at the polls. Voting starts on Thursday and goes through May 14th. And then the last day of voting is May 17th. And I have a primary that I'm trying to win. And then after that, we'll see whether or not I have an opponent for the full election. But I'm very focused right now on putting out a good showing this election and working very hard. I'll be at the polls in Johnston County. And if I can get down to Harnett County, I'm seriously going to try to get down there. But there are so many places, so many precincts, so many voting locations. It's going to be hard to get everywhere. I would appreciate everyone's support, their vote. I'm running as a grassroots campaign. If they could tell their friends and their family, I heard a lot about this guy. I heard what he had to say. I like his views. He's conservative like us. This is the person we want as a district court judge. If you feel that way, I would love for you to tell everyone you know and to come out and vote. Voting is so important from local elections on up.
Absolutely. That's how we exercise our authorities as citizens. So once again, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with the people of Harnett County and the district. We really appreciate it. And good luck to you in the primaries. I'm sure we'll be seeing you around soon.
I appreciate you and everything you do. Thank you.
And but I'm proud to be an American.